So this will be a review of Battle Group NORTHAG by the Plastic Soldier Company. I was very fortunate to be an early backer, so in addition to hardback rulebook, I was also provided with a PDF copy, which I've now printed out and put into a spiral bound. This just allows me to have the book slightly easily more accessible on the table, and also keep up with any little minor changes and tweaks that I want to try out. So let's have a look at what's inside. The rules allow a gamer to recreate a fictional Cold War conflict in Northwest Europe in around about the 1983-1984 timeline, a period when modern equipment was starting to be pushed out into NATO, and the Warsaw Pact forces are still at this stage at a peak of military effectiveness. The rules themselves are pretty straightforward, cover how orders are issued, vehicle and infantry movement rates, rules for helicopters, indirect fire, the bogeyman of the Cold War battlefield, both chemical and nuclear weaponry is included, as is air power and engineering. In NORTHAG, you also have two starting armies, a BAOR 1BR Corps, all back for the British, and Warsaw Pact in the form of the Soviets from the Group of Soviet Forces Germany. Rather than jumping through each of the rule sections straight away, what I'm going to do is quickly talk about force structure and overall scenario design. Once we've got an idea of that, then I'll come back and talk you through a sample turn or two and some of the mechanics that are used. So let's go now on to battle group force structures. All the army lists have roughly the same structure. There's a concept of a forward screen, vanguard, main column and reinforcements. So let's talk about each one of those in detail. So first off then is your forward screen. This is primarily light recce or forward recce in the case of Soviets. You have the option with Soviet force for adding some main battle tanks as reconnaissance elements. This simulates things like the combat reconnaissance patrol. So this is my Soviet force, or what those units in my Soviet force are available to recce. BRDM armoured cars, dismounted infantry, T-64s, again from the combat recce patrol, some armoured infantry patrols, either flank or again those elements making up the CRP, and then also gives you the option to, or the ability to put on some air defence units. I wouldn't historically expect to find these this far forward, but battle group is about getting your toys on the table and not 100% historically accurate. I wouldn't expect to find an SA-8 Gecko this far forward, but it's interesting that it gives you the ability to get your toys and everything on the table. For the Brits, just a range of some of the things you might find as a covering force, possibility of some main battle tanks dug in, provide part of the forward screen, and then scimitars, scorpions, Spartans, strikers, and gazelles in an artillery OP role, all would start on the table and provide elements of your forward screen. Next off, have a look at the vanguard. So the next element after the forward screen is the vanguard, comes on in the second turn, and this is normally based around, if you're Soviets, normally either a reinforced motor rifle company or a tank company. If you're playing NATO, you're restricted to infantry, a mechanised infantry platoon or a chieftain platoon. Up next then is the main column. This is then where your remaining parts of your armour, more mechanised infantry, engineering assets, some anti-tank elements if you're NATO might start to come on the table, and back to the same block of Soviet forces, another tank company or a number of motor rifle platoons all now come on, again with engineering assets and additional anti-tank units. Artillery is not modelled on the table, with the exception of the Soviets, who do get half a battery of 2 S1s in a direct fire roll. At the scale of the game, it's assumed that all the artillery is off table, because either it hasn't had time to survey itself in, or it's longer range weaponry providing support to your battle group. Can get some players caught out a little bit trying to get their mind around things if they come from other game systems, expecting to see everything on the table. But I think Battle Group does a really good job. Also in the main column are things like timed airstrikes. If you're NATO, BAR at this, 1BR call at this stage, possibility of Harriers or Jaguars. If you're Soviets, Fitters, Floggers, and Frogfoot. These little two babies at the back here are for possibly what we might get to see in Centag when it comes out. I already had a reasonably large West German army, so I'm assuming something along those lines might well appear. So they're already painted up and based, ready to go. Let's move on then to reinforcements. NORTHAG uses the concept of reinforcement roles to bring on larger elements of your force, and it assumes then that this battle is starting to focus the attention of your varying commanders, who now want to rush more and more forces to it. The way that the reinforcement system works is battle groups start potentially with a reinforcement request and may purchase additional reinforcements requests depending on the size of the game. This then allows you once per turn to roll a d6. You declare the type of reinforcement you're hoping will arrive. If you get the score on that d6, it will arrive. If not only does it not arrive, but you don't get to re-roll until next turn. And depending on the criticality of that support, drives the score. So common units, armour, infantry are easier to get. Specialist tank killers, some of the more advanced army requires a greater score, indicating that command isn't necessarily happy to release that to you. So that gives you a rough idea of the general force structures and layout from what's in NORTHAG. And what we might do in the bit later on is start decking then actually a couple of turn sequences and then activity that happens and the varying mechanisms that are used. Hopefully you find it useful.